All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for coming out. Happy New Year. I wasn't sure if people would come so soon after the holidays. But then someone said maybe we'd get more people so soon after the holidays because people are excited to start the year right. And it looks like they were right. So I'm glad to have such a great group here. My name is Dan Zigmond. I'm teaching tonight. I teach in the Zen Buddhist tradition that comes out of Japan. And since for many of you this is your first time with us, I'm here every month, the first Tuesday of the month. And we'll spend most of our time just meditating, just sitting together in meditation. But I usually say a few words at the beginning, and then I take questions at the end. The question answer is actually probably my favorite part of doing these, of teaching. I mean, I like meditating as well, but I can meditate at home. But questions I get from students are really interesting to me. And so I hope that you've brought questions with you. And I'm happy to talk about anything to talk about the meditation we do together, or other questions you have about Zen or Buddhist practice, or really anything else that's on your mind. As I said, that's really the part of teaching I most enjoy. Zen meditation is quite simple. I think that's why I gravitated to it when I was young and have stuck with it. You can explain it quite quickly, and I'll do that for any of you who haven't done Zen meditation before. But just because it's simple doesn't mean that it's easy, and doesn't mean that it's not very powerful. It's, I think, in some ways, the purest form of meditation. The particular style of Zen sitting meditation that we do on these nights is what in Japan they call shikantaza, which is translated more or less to mean just sitting, or nothing but sitting. And the idea is that you're literally just sitting without really adding anything to that act, but trying to do it with your full being and your full attention, to try to give yourself wholly to just sitting and nothing else. That's not to say that you don't think, you don't have thoughts, you don't have memories, you don't have emotions, but you're not trying to think or have thoughts or emotions. If they arise, you let them arise, but you don't give them any particular energy. You don't allow them to consume your attention. You try to direct your attention fully on just sitting. It's a strange practice in some ways, but as I said, I think of it as kind of the purest and most fundamental form of meditation. The version that I practice and that I teach comes out of Japan, but it has a lot in common with meditation traditions in other parts of Asia, in China, Southeast Asia, places like Thailand and Burma, and even in non-Buddhist contexts. There seems to be something, I don't know, quite fundamental about sitting quietly and allowing yourself to experience whatever arises. And that practice seems to have been discovered independently many times in many places over and over again. There are a few things that seem to make it a little more manageable. Sometimes this idea that we just sit and do nothing else, it's so simple that it seems like it's not enough. We need a little more structure to it in order to make it a viable practice, in order to sort of get our arms around it. And so there's a couple of things that we bring to this practice. So one is to try to sit upright. So right now I'm sort of leaned back in like a relaxed posture. But when we do meditation, we try to sit upright. And you can sit in the chair, or you can use a cushion on the floor. In a temple, we would usually have cushions on the floor, and there are plenty of cushions back there if you'd like to sit that way once we start our meditation. But it's also perfectly reasonable to sit on a chair. I was actually at a meeting with a bunch of the leadership of the San Francisco Zen Center all day yesterday. We were all together, and we were not meeting at the San Francisco Zen Center because it was people from all different temples. We were meeting actually at a church that they had rented. And because it was a church, we didn't have cushions, we just had chairs. And so we all these Zen monks together, just meditated sitting in chairs at the beginning and end of the meeting. And that's a perfectly good way to meditate as well. So in addition to just sitting, we try to bring some attention to our posture, to sit upright, with our back straight and our shoulders back. And as I said, you can cross your legs, sit on the floor, or you can sit in a chair. If you sit in the chair, it's usually best to get your feet firmly on the ground. That helps keep this upright posture. We place our hands in our laps, one palm over the other, and our thumbs just lightly touching, making this circle. That circle has become somewhat of a symbol of Zen. You sometimes see it drawn in broad strokes with a brush in Zen calligraphy. It can signify emptiness, nothingness, but it's also just our very concrete hand position for meditation. You can cast your gaze down in front of you, maybe just a few feet in front of your feet, or you can close your eyes entirely. This room is a little bright, and we're all facing each other, so sometimes it's easiest just to shut our eyes. And then because it's often hard, difficult to keep our attention on this act of sitting, we make one other sort of adjustment, and we pay attention to our breathing as a way of keeping us present in this act of sitting. Since we can't sit, at least for any length of time, without also breathing, we allow ourselves to notice each breath that we take while we sit. And in doing that, that helps keep our attention grounded in this present moment. There's nothing, I think, particularly magical about paying attention to our breath, but it forms a sort of natural metronome. We could, in theory, pay attention to our heart rate instead, to the beating of our heart. But for most of us, we just physically can't do that. We can't pay attention to our heart without using something like a stethoscope or putting our fingers at one of our pulse points. So our breath is this kind of unique and wonderful thing that happens continuously, throughout our life without stopping for any length of time. It happens whether we try to breathe or not. And yet we also have the ability to pay attention to it, to notice it. Unlike other automatic functions in our body, our heartbeat, our digestion, we have access to it with our senses. If I asked you to pay attention to your stomach digesting your food, you might struggle to do that. But we can pay attention to our lungs breathing. Somehow we have that ability. Traditional Zen meditation is completely silent, but I have adapted that a bit. And so usually what I do is I give some guidance for the meditation the first time. So we'll meditate together for a period with some guidance. And then we kind of do it a second time. And the second time, I hope you'll remember that guidance, but we sit in silence, just bringing our attention to our breathing. We won't sit particularly long. I usually do about 10 or 15 minutes, depending on the group. Again, do one period like that and then take just a short break, 1 or 2 minutes to get a drink of water or stretch your legs, and then we do another period. And then when we're done with that, I'll just open things up for questions and we can talk about whatever whatever is on your minds. I usually ask a couple things that I forgot to ask. Is there anyone who it's their first time here at the San Francisco Dharma Collective? Okay. And anyone for whom it's your first time meditating at all? Okay. All right. Well, welcome those of you coming for the first time. It's such a beautiful and wonderful space. At San Francisco, it's really, I think particularly if you take the Bay Area as a whole, we probably have more different meditation traditions represented like in this geographical area than maybe anywhere on earth. I mean, it's really amazing. You could study literally any meditation tradition that you wanted. But so thank you even more for choosing to study here now with so many choices available to you. But this is really just such a special space, and it's unusual in that it's a sort of non-denominational Dharma space. So teachers of all sorts come here, which is really lovely. You know, most of the places that exist, including other places where I teach, you know, align themselves with a single tradition, and they exist really to perpetuate that tradition, and that's lovely. But it's also lovely to have places where traditions can overlap and intersect, and where students can encounter lots of different sorts of teachings, lots of different versions of the Dharma, and this is one of those spaces, and those are more rare, and so we're really blessed to have this. I appreciate you all coming here to support it. You'll see this big bell that we brought in from the library. In a traditional Zen temple, nobody wears a watch except for the main timekeeper, and everything is managed in the temple through instruments, through bells and drums and gongs and things like that. So there's a bell that tells you when to wake up, a bell that tells you when to come to the meditation hall, a bell that starts and ends the meditation, a bell that tells you when to start work, a bell that tells you when it's time to eat, all these different instruments that go through the day. So we don't have that here, but I like to bring part of that tradition and to time our meditations with a traditional bell like this. And you know, again, because people aren't wearing watches and so they don't know necessarily what to expect during the day, there's a rhythm to the bells that kind of tell you what's going on. So when we start the meditation, I ring the bell 3 times. It'll sound like this. And I recommend, you know, when I ring the bell to start meditation, that you, in order to kind of help you make that transition from your ordinary mind to your meditative mind, that you just listen to the bell and just listen to it until you can't hear it any longer. And from there, we'll start our practice of paying attention to our breathing. When the meditation period is over, when we've done do 10 minutes for our first period, I'll ring the bell 2 times if we're going to meditate again, which we will after that first period. So 2 times tells you we're going to take a little break, but it's not time to like pack up and leave or to start talking or something like that. We're going to take a break. We're going to have time to stretch or get a drink of water, but we're going to be meditating again. So at the end of the first period, you'll hear 2 bells. And we'll try to remain silent. I won't take questions in that period, but that does tell you it's okay to move around if you need or would like, and do whatever you need. I'll ring the bell 3 times to start the second period, and then when it's all done, when we're done with meditation for the evening, I'll just ring the bell once as a closing. We try to remain still during meditation, and that's difficult. It's difficult just to be still, even for 10 or 15 minutes. And most of us, at some point, either very quickly or a little later in the period of meditation, you'll feel some desire to move. You might have an itch, or just something feels uncomfortable, or maybe your foot starts to fall asleep. You have some pain in your legs or your back. And our practice is to try to be still when that happens, to notice those things arising, but not to let them control our actions. That said, if you have, real pain, or you're concerned about injury, I certainly don't want anyone to injure themselves. And there's kind of almost a blanket exception in the Buddhist scriptures, that the Buddha had various sorts of rules for how to live and how to do different things, but there is kind of a blanket exception if your health is at stake. And so there's rules, for example, about when you're allowed to eat, or even some of the things you're not allowed to eat or drink. But none of those apply if you're ill and you have some reason that you need for your own health to do something different. And so I think the same applies to the kind of rules, the guidelines around meditation. If you feel that you're having pain or you're risking some sort of injury, then by all means, make an adjustment and move. But keep in mind that our practice is to try to cultivate this stillness in our sitting. So that's about it in terms of instruction. As I said, it's fairly simple. We're sitting upright, sitting still, and bring our attention to our breathing. And that's just about it. But it's not quite as easy as it sounds. And so I think the best way to explore it further is to just do it together. As I said, we'll sit twice, do 10 minutes, and then maybe do 15 minutes. In that first sitting, I'll give some guidance as we go to remind you of how this practice operates. And then in the second one, I'll let you be mostly in silence. And then I'll take questions. We should, if I have the timing, if I've done the math right, we'll have about half an hour for questions after that. But if there's any brief questions about what I've talked about so far before we get started, we can take those now. Yeah, please.
How do you discern if you're not falling asleep?
The question for those of you online or anyone who didn't hear is what do you do about falling asleep when you meditate? It can happen, absolutely. I think part of sitting upright is that little bit of effort it takes helps to keep us awake and alert. The other thing is that when you're paying attention to your posture, it can almost serve as a sort of early warning sign of falling asleep. So I often find that I notice the change in my posture before I notice sort of the changes in my mind. And so often, for example, if we're starting to daydream, our heads will start to drift up and back a little bit. And if we're starting to fall asleep, our head and even our whole body will start to fall forward. And if you're paying attention to your posture, you may notice it in your posture before you notice it elsewhere. And then, when you notice it, you just, as if you were noticing anything else, you just try to bring yourself upright again, bring your attention back to your breathing. But I don't know anyone who's meditated for, many years and hasn't had some experience of falling asleep. So it does happen, particularly when we meditate at night, and particularly in a comfortable place like this. So yeah. All right, so with that, why don't we try to find our upright posture? You can sit on the floor if you prefer. You can sit on the chairs. All right. Let's find our upright posture with our back straight, our shoulders back, our hands sitting in our laps. And tuck your chin in just a little, which again will cause your gaze to fall naturally a little bit in front of you, but in a bright room like this, you're also welcome to just close your eyes entirely. As I said, I'll ring the bell 3 times for us to start. And when you hear the bell, please just listen to the bell. Listen to it until you can't hear it any longer. And then bring your attention to your breathing. And I'll pick things up from there. Let's begin. Now bring your full attention to your breathing. You don't need to control your breath in any way. There's no need to match your breathing to my breathing, to your neighbor, or to any fixed idea of how your breathing should be. Just notice each breath exactly as it is. Giving your full attention to each in-breath and each out-breath. In-breath, out-breath. In-breath, out-breath. If thoughts arise, let them arise and let them go. Notice each thought and release it. Don't beat yourself up for getting distracted. Just allow each thought to be a reminder to bring your attention back to the next in-breath and the next out-breath. In-breath, out-breath. In-breath, out-breath. It often helps in keeping ourselves present to notice the unique qualities of each and every breath. Notice whether each breath is long or short. Notice whether each breath is fast or slow. Notice these qualities without evaluating them, without judging them, without judging yourself. Just keep coming back to the next in-breath and the next out-breath. In-breath. Out-breath. In-breath. Out-breath. Whatever arises, thoughts, feelings, memories, emotions. Let all of them arise and let all of them go. And keep coming back to the next in-breath and the next out-breath. In-breath. Out-breath. In a moment, I'll ring the bell 2 times to end this first meditation. Again, when you hear the bell, just listen to the bell. Listen to it until you can't hear it any longer. Then take one more in-breath, one more out-breath, and open your eyes. One more in-breath. One more out-breath. And open your eyes. Okay, you can take a moment to stretch your legs, to take some water, to remove or put on a layer if you'd like. We'll wait about 2 minutes and then we'll start again. All right, let's start trying to find our upright posture again. Again, I'll ring the bell 3 times for us to start. When I ring the bell, please listen to the bell. Listen to it until you can't hear it any longer. And then bring your attention to your breathing. I'll remain mostly silent during this sitting, but you can follow the same instructions that I gave you before. And we'll begin. Remember, whatever brought you here this evening, whatever you're returning to when you leave, whatever else you have going on this week, this month, this year, nothing is more important right now, in this moment, than giving your full attention to this moment of sitting and breathing. Because if you can give your full attention to this moment, you can give your full attention to the next moment, and the moment after that, and the moment after that, and to every moment after that. And giving your full attention to every moment is what it means to be fully awake and fully alive. In a moment, I'll ring the bell one time to end our meditation tonight. Once again, when you hear the bell, just listen to the bell. Listen to it until you can't hear it any longer. Then take one more in-breath, one more out-breath, and open your eyes. One more in-breath, one more out-breath, and open your eyes. I love it when the meditation ends with the church bells. It's just, you probably can't hear it online, but we have a church literally just ringing its bells right now. Well, thank you so much. That was some lovely upright sitting, some beautiful stillness. You can make yourself comfortable, stretch. And I just thought I would take questions, either in the room or online. But anything that came up for you while we were sitting, or anything maybe that brought you here tonight that you would like to ask. Yeah, please. And if you could say your name, just so folks know who you are.
My name is Leah. Thank you. This is Leah. Outside of having a dedicated meditation practice, if you're going through something difficult, what advice do you have just as you're going through your daily life for mindfulness or interrupting some of those, say, repetitive thoughts or even physical sensations?
So the question, if you didn't hear, was other than having a daily meditation practice, what is some advice for when you're going through difficult time, maybe to help with repetitive thoughts or even physical sensations? You know, I don't think that there's any magic. I think that difficult times are difficult. I do think the practice of meditation can be helpful. This practice of sitting noticing our thoughts and letting them go, noticing our thoughts without hanging on to them, without letting them control us, noticing perhaps the desire to move our legs or scratch our back without feeling we actually have to do that. That's a useful skill that we can call on in these difficult times. And it can be hard to meditate, you said other than our daily practice, but even maintaining a daily practice can be quite difficult when we're having a difficult time, when we're mourning or struggling or in physical pain. But I do think it's important. I think we sometimes feel, I don't know, there's no point meditating if I'm just going to sit there and I'm just going to dwell on this issue I'm having, a loss, for example, a disappointment. But there's no particular goal in meditation other than to be present and to notice whatever arises. And so it's okay if the same thing just keeps arising. It's not a failure. As long as you're still sitting there when the timer goes off, that's a perfectly good period of meditation. And I think in a funny way that's true of life as well, that there's no particular goal to life other than to fully experience it and be present for it. I was having a conversation with someone just yesterday, and they used the phrase, I can't quite remember how they put it, but that maybe the universe wants this or wants that. And I was sort of saying, I don't think the universe wants anything. It just is. It's not a person with desires like us. The world is just happening. And so there isn't really anything that's supposed to happen or not supposed to happen. And that can be frustrating because we want it to make sense and we want it to have a goal. But I'm not sure that there always is one. So I don't mean to make it sound easy. It is quite difficult. I've gone through losses over the last few years, and I can't say that meditation made it easy, but maybe at times that practice of paying attention, noticing things, at least made it a little less hard. I hope that's helpful. Other questions? Oh yeah, there's a question online. Oh, Martin. Martin always has a question.
Yes, well, when you started the first time, there wasn't anyone who asked any questions. And so you called on me. And
Hang on,
I
Martin,
didn't have
we
a
lost you
question.
for a second, or maybe
Oops.
more than a second.
Oh, can you hear me now? Okay, can you hear me? No, maybe not. No? Hello? Can you hear me? No?
Oh yeah, now you're back. Thank you.
I'm
Sorry.
back. Oh, you can hear me
Start
now?
over. We can hear you now, so start over, please.
Okay, great. I was saying, well, I promised you the first session when I didn't have any questions. When you called on me, I promised you, okay, I'll bring you a question a month for the next few months.
Okay.
So there you have it. But with respect to the universe not wanting anything, so I've been pondering that too. But it strikes me that if the universe does want anything, it wants evolution and personal growth. Because when we stagnate and we don't do anything about personal growth, that's when we get in trouble, and then the universe punishes us, seems like. So. Sorry about the barking dog in the background. But I was wondering, in this tradition, can you remind me, with respect to the eyes, Are you doing eyes closed or are you doing eyes gazing at the floor? And so that's my first basic question. But then my other question is, the back, do you do any exercises to like be able to sit up straight for more than 20 minutes without leaning back against your chair? Back exercises or anything like that you can recommend, or or do you just get stronger by just doing it more and more?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Those are great questions. So let's see. The question about the eyes is a little bit, well, it's not complicated, but it's not a straightforward answer because traditionally in Zen, you would sit with your eyes opened and cast down towards the floor, but you would sit facing the wall. And so your eyes are open, but there's nothing to see. So your eyes are open, but you're looking at a blank, sort of a blank canvas. And it's very unusual. In some traditions, at the very last meditation, you face the room, or, in some traditions, you occasionally sit more the way we're sitting, facing other people. But, in general, you're doing all your meditation facing a wall. And so, although your eyes are open, there's very little visual distraction. So it's not totally clear how to adapt that to this kind of environment where those of us in the room are all facing each other, and those of us online are facing a bright screen, which again is just very unlike what the situation would be in a traditional Zen temple. And so my usual recommendation, given the choice of either sitting facing a room or a bright screen or closing your eyes, is that maybe it's better just to close your eyes. That's a closer approximation of looking at a blank wall than looking at a crowded room. But it's really up to you. The risk of closing your eyes is that it's easier to either fall asleep or start daydreaming. So having your eyes partly open helps us to stay present because it's harder to fall asleep with your eyes open. It can be done, but it's just harder. You're less likely to fall asleep. So that's the risk. The risk of sitting with your eyes open rather than closed is just the visual distraction and just getting, particularly if you're facing a screen, other things pop up on the screen, but even here facing the room, there's just a lot going on in this room. Back when I first started meditating, like meditating in my dorm, it wasn't always easy to find a blank wall, but I found that even meditating facing a bookcase was sort of distracting because I would find myself reading the spines of the books. Because our minds will kind of latch on to anything other than just themselves, other than just allowing ourselves to be with ourselves. And so in this kind of environment, my usual advice is to sit with your eyes closed, but you're welcome to do either one. And again, there's kinds of trade-offs. In terms of exercises to strengthen your back, I'm sure that there are, but the usual approach in Zen is exactly the answer you gave yourself, which is just you practice meditating and over time it gets easier. And so, if you do a daily practice of 5 or 10 minutes a day and then maybe occasionally sit longer, your back will just naturally get stronger. And, of course, you can sit upright even when you're not meditating and get practice that way too. So you can do it when you're eating or watching TV. I mean, any time that you're sitting, you could try to practice sitting upright. And I think part of why, like in Japan, it tends not to be such an issue is just many people grow up sitting on the floor and sitting upright all the time. And so it's almost everything in life gets easier with practice, and the sitting posture seems to be no exception. So I hope that's helpful. Other questions about, and you can ask concrete questions like that, like how do I sit, or you can ask other sorts of questions. Yeah, you just take the microphone. Maybe you could say your name too, so we all know who you are.
Yeah, hi, I'm Nishita. I thought it was insightful when you said that to be awake is to give your full attention to a moment. And I'm curious because there are so many moments within a moment, or there's so much that happens within a moment. Like, for example, when we were meditating, I'm noticing my breath, but I'm also hearing your instructions. And so what does giving attention mean? Is it noticing and letting go? Is it dwelling onto something? I'm just curious what you mean when you say, yeah, like what does attention look like in our lives when there's so much stimulus going on?
Yeah. And could you say your name again?
Nishita.
Nishita. So if you couldn't hear, Nishita asked a very easy question, which is, what is paying attention? It's so the style of meditation we're doing, I mentioned the Japanese name of Shikantaza, but it's also more or less the same as the style of meditation usually referred to as mindfulness meditation, where it's just being fully present. And so I say that partially in answer to your question of what does it mean to be paying attention while we're sitting. I think it means to try to be fully present with this act of sitting and breathing. Now, you're right that at some level, you couldn't possibly pay attention to everything that's happening in that moment. I had a good friend. I lived at one point at the San Francisco Zen Center for about a year, and I had a good friend there who was older than me and was an experienced meditator. And he used to say that, when you're sitting when you're doing Zen meditation and you're sort of doing it right, that you're noticing, every speck of dust, like literally everything. You're aware of everything that's happening. And of course, it's not really possible to be aware of everything, to pay attention to everything. I think it's easier maybe to talk about what we're trying not to do. And so what we're trying not to do is get lost and pulled out of this present moment. So, for example, almost inevitably, thoughts arise when we meditate. Our goal is not to have no thoughts. Our goal is just to pay attention to whatever arises, and part of what arises is thoughts. And so you might have a thought. I had thoughts while I was meditating. I'll see if I can remember any of them. But yeah, so I think I thought about someone who I was supposed to email, who I hadn't emailed yet. And, it's after the holidays, so I'm getting back in touch with people that I had been having conversations with, and then, stopped over the holidays. So I remembered one of these people that I was supposed to email this week now that we're back from the holidays. So that's okay. There's nothing wrong with having that thought arise. So that thought arose, and I noticed it. But what we're trying not to do is get too caught up in that thought. So okay, I'm supposed to email them. What was I supposed to send them? I really should have emailed them yesterday. Now I'm going to have to do it tomorrow. And sort of let one thing lead to another. And pretty soon I'm just really kind of consumed by this whole plan of what I'm going to be doing in the future, rather than what's actually happening here. And so we don't want to get so into kind of analyzing our thoughts that we're kind of lost in them. We're no longer here now. There are other styles of meditation that are more kind of analytical, like you notice something and then you really explore, where does that come from and why am I having that thought? And our style is just a little different. It's in a way not to ask deep questions of ourselves, but just to try to fully experience ourselves as we are and see what that's like. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
This isn't necessarily about practice, but more about Zen. I had been listening to Stephen Batchelor's book, and it was talking about a Korean style of Zen where you do ask questions like, what is this? Or who am I?
Yeah.
And maybe let that, and I'm unsure if that was to guide the meditation. And I think the end result is to fully embody the question, I think is what I heard. And I guess I'm asking, is there any sort of corollary to that in the Japanese Zen that you practice of the questioning?
Yeah.
Or the koans, or are they related at all?
They are related. So Zen first developed in China, and so Buddhism got started in India. From India spread to first to Sri Lanka. So now the oldest versions of Buddhism are practiced in Sri Lanka, but then to Southeast Asia. So Burma, from Burma down to Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and then a little later spread north into China. In China, encountered these indigenous religions like Taoism and Confucianism, and Zen somehow grew out of that encounter, and was an attempt to kind of get back to a sort of a purity of Buddhism. The word Zen is the Japanese pronunciation of this Chinese word, which is itself a pronunciation of a Sanskrit word that just means meditation. So it was just, they just said, okay, we're going to be the meditation school of Buddhism that just focuses on meditation. And from there it spread. So Zen spread to Japan, where my teacher came from, but then it also spread down to Korea and to Vietnam. And so there are, distinct schools of Zen in all these places, in China, Korea, Vietnam, Taiwan, Japan, and now America, Europe, Africa, all over. Already in China, it had kind of split into a few different schools over the centuries, and the two main ones that survive, I know them by their Japanese names. I don't know what their Chinese names were, but the Soto school that emphasized just sitting, what we were doing, and the Rinzai school that emphasized this practice of koans, which were questions that you would ask yourself. They sound like sort of puzzles. Some of them are, somewhat familiar in popular culture, like what is it's the sound of one hand clapping. And you kind of focus on these questions instead of focusing on your breath. I think of it as sort of a substitute for that. And so you're still trying to be fully present, but you're using the question as kind of the handle rather than your breath as the handle to stay fully present. And it's a little like a mantra practice that way. There's many traditions, including Buddhist traditions of mantras, where you just say a phrase over and over again, or a word over and over again. And again, use that as kind of a handle to stay in this moment, to not get pulled into thoughts and feelings and memories and things like that. So yeah, I think Stephen Batchelor was practiced in the Korean tradition for quite a long time, and I think was ordained in that tradition. And it sounds like studied these sorts of koans. And yeah, my sense is that they can be quite powerful. I haven't done koan practice myself, but I think they are, again, a sort of a useful foothold or handhold to help us stay present. And they're questions that don't really have answers. And so, in a sense, the question itself isn't really the point. But they're tools to help us deepen our practice and stay fully present. And they seem to be quite powerful.
So you can use them in your meditation practice as...
In some of these Zen traditions, people use them in their meditation practice. So I don't teach koans in part because I haven't studied them myself, but that's how they're used. And so people who use koans, they just, instead of focusing on their breathing, inhale, exhale, they'll focus on these questions like, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And just go through that over and over again while they're sitting.
Okay, thank you.
Oh yeah, there's someone in the back. Oh, yeah, then we'll get to you right after that. Sorry.
I'm not really sure. Oh, I'm Nancy. Hello.
Hi, Nancy.
I'm not really sure what my question is, but I noticed that I would be okay, and then I would have some discomfort, and then I would think, that's fine because I'm meditating and I'm not going to notice this discomfort. And then it kind of grows, and then, it it was amazing to me. It happened a couple of times where I watched it spiral out of control from like, oh, I'm discomfort to I am totally done with this. Ring the bell. Are we done?
Yeah.
And I was just surprised how quickly it cascaded there, and then trying to scramble to like reorient myself back to the breath was like much harder. So
Yeah.
if you can comment on that
Sure.
observation.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Sometimes it feels like we can live a whole lifetime in the 15 minutes of meditation. So much can happen. There can be such drama and such change. And then it can shift again. Just when we think, as you say, we feel it spiraled fully out of control, and then somehow we're in a different place. You know, I think the amazing thing about meditation is that each moment is a fresh chance. So whatever's happening now, you can be pretty sure that something different will be happening in the next moment. And we just stick with it. So you said, you know, you were okay, and then you were starting to feel this discomfort, and then it was spiraling out of control. And the only thing I would say really is that you were still okay. And it's all okay. It's all just part of the experience. I've told this story a bunch of times, but the very first, and so maybe I've told it to some of you here, the very first meditation retreat I sat was down at the Zen Center of Los Angeles, and it was while I was in college. And the retreat, and so I went during Christmas break, and the retreat went from Christmas to New Year's, which I look back and think that's so strange. How did anyone other than me want to spend both Christmas and New Year's sitting at retreat? But other people did, I guess, because there were a bunch of us there. And it ended on New Year's Eve, like at midnight, and we heard all the fireworks and gunfire and things going off. And then we all like got into like a little circle, and we just talked about what the retreat was like for us. And I just will never forget this one guy who said that for him, the way it felt is that the bell would ring to start the session. So we'd go, 1, 2, 3, and then just the bell would ring to end the session. And it just felt like there was no time in between. So it was just like 1, 2, 3, 4, and that was it. And I just hated that guy because I felt like these sessions were so long and so much happened. I had all these ups and downs and just like misery and happiness and like all kinds of things. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I would want them to go by in an instant like that. I do sort of feel the whole point is to be there for it. And so I know it can be a roller coaster, but that's part of what we're learning, is that it can be this roller coaster and it's all okay. Thank you. I think we had one more question.
Thank you. My name is Jyotsna. So I practiced more the Theravada lineage, similar mindfulness, and learned about the craving mind and how that causes suffering. And I observe my craving mind of wanting to observe the breath and wanting to become better and wanting to grow, and sometimes that leads to frustration and suffering. So how do you balance that with actually?
Yeah. So the question is, maybe with practice, we notice that, one of the cravings, one of the desires, one of the things happening in our mind is that we want to meditate, we want to be better at meditation, we want to, and how do we deal with that kind of craving? Is that right? And I think the answer is just that it's no better or worse than any other kind of craving. We just notice it. We notice that we have this desire to be better, and we try to let that go as well. Some of you have also heard me say this before, but for me, meditation is this safe space where I don't have to be good at anything. And so there really isn't, you can get better at some of the mechanics. Like as I was saying to Martin, you can get better at sitting up straight. You can get so that you have less pain and discomfort that Nancy was experiencing. But in terms of the meditation itself, I don't really know exactly that you can get better because you're not really trying to do anything other than be present. And as long as you're still sitting there at the end of the meditation, then you did what you needed to do. And so we all spend so much of our lives trying to be good at things. I try to be a good father and a good friend and a good teacher and a good boyfriend. And I try to be good at so many things, a good citizen. But I guess I don't try to be a good meditator. When I'm meditating, I give myself permission to just be. And it can be just such a wonderful break from trying to be good at things. So I guess I would encourage you, by all means, notice that desire. I think all of us, or many of us, have this desire to be good at everything we do. And so it's fine, notice that. There's nothing wrong with that. But then also give yourself permission to let that go, because you don't have to be good at it. You can just be. I think that's pretty much all of our time. Thank you so much, all of you, for coming here. It's really wonderful to see such a big group, and I'm here every month, so the first Tuesday of the month. I teach at a few other places, and so you can reach out to me or find me online if you want to come to one of my retreats or something like that. But it's really just such a privilege to sit with other people. In the old days, everybody meditated in groups. This business of meditating alone in our apartments is like a new thing. That isn't what Buddha did. And yet that's how most of us have to do our practice. And so in these rare cases where we can sit together, it's just such a privilege and such a blessing. So thank you so much for coming and bringing your questions.